Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are attending the MattithYAHU Direct webinar. I am Ayana and I will be presenting to you today. But first, let us open with a word of prayer. Ab Yahuwah, thank you for this day. Thank you for blessing us and keeping us and watching over us. Thank you for your love, your mercy, your kindness. Thank you for the long suffering and providing all of our needs and most of our wants. We would like to thank you for our family and friends in our communities. Ab Yahuwah, I ask today if you could please bless us with a deep understanding and wisdom of your word. We want to know the customs that we'll be going over today, to understand them, to understand your word and what you're trying to convey to us properly. We ask that your word and the meanings of them be immersed into our hearts and into our minds. Lastly, Ab Yahuwah, I ask if you could please allow us to give us the latitude so that where we don't understand, you will be patient and fill us with more understanding and continue to teach us as your word stipulates. We thank you, we praise you, and we love you. And we ask these things in your Kedusha name, Yahuwah Aloy Ya'am, through your son, Yahusha HaMashiach. Hallelujah. All right. Well, again, this is MattithYAHU Direct. And let us start with our statement scripture, which can be found in Yahuchanan 14:16. Yahusha said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. And that word way is actually direct. Delet, resh, het. So as you can see here, the word direct is from, you can find it in Strong's H1870, and it means a road, figuratively a course of life or a mode of action, adverbially a journey, a manner, or a pathway. And so in naming MattithYAHU Direct, we are learning Yahuwah's way. We are learning Yahuwah's manner. And we're learning to follow that, to go along that narrow path as this illustration shows us. So let us start with the Shema, which translated into English is the hearing. And you can find that in Devarim, chapter 6, verses 4 through 6. Now this is not the complete Shema. This is just an abbreviated version. And let us start. As you can see here, the three sentences, Hebrew is read from right to left. And as we go on, the English versions will show up here. Shema Yasharal. Yahuwah Aloy Ya'am. Yahuwah Akkad. Ahab Yahuwah Aloy Ya'am, Labab, Nefesh, Ma'ad, Dabar, Suah, Ya'um, Labab. And you can see what I read in Hebrew. This is the English version of it. You shall love Yahuwah, your Eloah, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with everything that is in you, or your strength. These words I charge you with this day shall be in your heart. All right, so this week we are continuing in learning some of the customs of the scriptures, and this is actually our third week. The first week we did the significance of the tent, and we talked about how the layout of the house and the home continued throughout the scriptures from beginning to end. Last week we talked about food customs, in the scriptures, and we talked about two significant ones. One was breaking bread together, and how you could not be an enemy of a person that you shared their hospitality and you ate their food. And then a more serious and solemn covenant was the salt covenant, and we showed how they're used all throughout. So this week we will be talking about celebration routines found in the scriptures. And if you recall, last week I had the same scripture here, and it's from MattithYAHU, chapter 22, verse 4. And this scripture will be the core scripture that we use this week, because we will be talking about the wedding feast. This is the parable that Yahu talked about, and so I thought it was appropriate to use this one. Again, he, the king, sent out other servants, saying, "Say to those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are slaughtered, and all is ready. Come to the wedding feast." And as you can see here, here are two different pictures, and these are two different type modes of having a feast or a celebration. The top picture here that you can see, this was the custom or the mode of celebrating and eating with the Greek/Roman type way. And as you can see, it's a U-shaped table. And the diners are actually, they're like laid down on what looks like beds. Well, these beds are called triunums. Okay, and the custom was they would lean on their left side and pick up the food and eat with their right. And this is probably the setup where, if you can recall, and I don't remember the scriptures right off, but where the lady came in and she anointed Yahusha's head, and she also anointed his feet. Most probably experts, theologians say that he was probably laying on a triunum. And so she was able to anoint both his head and wash and oil his feet. And I can't recall the scripture. But the second picture down here, this is the mode in which the Hebrews around the 1st century would celebrate. So they had a lower lying table closer to the ground, and they would sit, either cross-legged or to the side. You see the various positions here. Now, in both cases, and I'm giving you a little bit of this ahead of time, but in both cases, the host and the honored guest sat in the middle. Whereas these days, the host would sit at the end of the table. Back then, the prime seats were in the middle. And so this would be your host in the case of the Greek-Roman way of celebrating, and you would have honored guests on either side of you. Here in the Hebrew setting, the host would be in the middle, and any honored guest or closest to them would sit near to them. So, just one moment. Give me a couple of seconds here. All right, so we're going to start off with the scripture that I mentioned, and this is the wedding feast. This is the parable Yahusha is speaking. He is, in this chapter, he's talking to the Pharisees and other people that are in the temple, if I remember correctly. And he is likening the kingdom of Yahuwah to this wedding feast parable. And so I'll just read it now. And you can find it in MattithYAHU 22, verses 2 through 9. The reign of Shema is like a man, a sovereign, which is a king, who made a wedding feast for his son, and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, "Say to those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are slaughtered, and all is ready. Come to the wedding feast." But they disregarded it and went their way, this one to his field, that one to his trade. And the rest, having seized his servants, insulted and killed them. But when the sovereign heard, he was wroth. That's an old-fashioned word for angry, enraged, and sent out his soldiers, destroyed those murderers, and set their city on fire. Then he said to his servants, "The wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Therefore, go into the street corners, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding feast." And so let us start. We will talk about 4 different customs that relate to that those verses and that parable of the wedding feast and the king. So custom 1 is the double invitation. And the double invitation, it was custom amongst the wealthy in those days, in the time of Yahusha, to issue 2 invitations. The first invitation was given well in advance of the event, pretty much like we do today. You know, if you think of a wedding today, you usually get your invitation several months in advance. And as it gets closer to the event, you get, you know, reminders and things like that. The second invitation was giving when the feast or the party was ready. So the day of, after everything was ready and prepared, the host would send servants to let them know that it is ready. But the catch is the second invitation was only issued to the people who had accepted the first invite. Okay? And don't worry about remembering this, because what we'll do at the end of, after I discuss the other 3 customs, is we'll go over the scriptures again, and I will point out to you the significance of these customs. Okay? So here are some other verses throughout the scripture. You have MattithYAHU 22, 3 and 4, which we read. Esther 5, chapter 5, verse 8, and chapter 6, verse 14. And in Luca, chapter 14, verses 16 and 17. So here is where you'll see other instances of a double invitation being sent out. All right, custom 2 is invitations only in a closed party. So the guests who accepted the first invite, they were given a card or a tablet around the 1st century, the time during when Yahusha was alive. And when they came to the party, they had to present that card or that tablet to the doorkeeper. Okay? You couldn't just walk in. All right? Once, and if you did not have that invitation, that card, that invite, or the tablet, you were not admitted. Okay? Once all of the invitees were assembled or had been, checked off the list, the master of the house would have a servant close the door to the party, and no one was let in. No matter how urgent the cries were, no matter how persistent the knocking was, no matter if there was someone that was in the party and they were supposed to go with that person. They could not be let in. All right, and as you see here, this illustration, I thought that was a pretty good illustration to show the doors are closed and there's a partition in front of the door, and guess what? You're not getting past this guy. That would be your symbolic doorkeeper. Now, as we know, our doorkeeper is Yahusha. He says so in Yahukanan, chapter 10. He tells us that he is the door. So we're definitely, if you have not accepted an invitation, you're not getting into the house. Here are other verses pertaining to invitations and closed parties. Again, in the chapter we're going over in MattithYAHU 22, there's also Luke 13 verses 24 and 25, and also Yahukanan chapter 10:7. So our third custom is the wedding garments, and this one is significant. And when we put all this together, you'll see its significance. But as you can see here, here are different various wedding parties from around the world. I believe this one is Nigerian, and we have Japanese, and we also have an Indian. And you can look at the different refinery that the guests in the wedding party has. They're not just walking in off the street. So the custom of the wedding garment is when a sovereign or a king, and it could be a queen, but usually it was a king in those days, made banquets available to the public at large and or on short notice, it was understood that guests did not have enough time to acquire the proper wedding clothing. So the sovereign, usually having an extensive wardrobe themselves, made gifts to the guests of fine clothing from their own closet, from their own, their own, they had plenty. So they took it and they presented it and they made gifts of it. And that gift was considered back in around the 1st century, that gift of clothing, fine clothing, okay, costly, expensive clothing, was considered a very high honor. And if you were presented with the clothing from a sovereign or from someone who was rich, that meant that they thought a lot about you and that they took the shirt off their own back, so to speak, to clothe you so you could be presentable to witness this feast, this wedding. And of course, if you denied it or if you refused the gift, it was a high insult in those days. So here are some other verses that talk about this custom in the wedding garments. Bereshith 45:22, Job chapter 27 verses 16 and 17, 1 Shemuel 18:4, and Esther 4:8. The last custom of the day is the assemblage of guests and seats of honor. Okay, and you see we have the same picture here where they're arranged and sitting, and we also have another illustration here where obviously this is the sovereign or the rich person, and everyone else is dressed in their refinery, but this person probably is not. So upon admittance to the feast, guests seated themselves according to how they wanted to and waited for the host to arrive. When the host did arrive, he looked at everyone, and if he didn't like where particular people were seated, he would rearrange the guests according to rank and social status. Okay, it was understood that guests should arrange themselves. Everyone knew what their social status was. Okay, but if someone had set themselves in front of someone else, and the host, did not want that, or if a honored guest was there and they weren't sitting close enough to the host, then they wouldn't have a problem rearranging. It wasn't considered rude. Okay? The seat of honored guests was next to the host in the middle of the table, which I mentioned before, and sometimes it was on a raised platform or a dais. Okay, and faced out toward the rest of the party, where all could observe them getting preferential treatment from the sovereign or the host of the party. So to sit here, and let me go back so I can show you that the better picture. To sit to the right or to the left of the host in the middle of the table was the best seat in the house, obviously. Okay. So let us go and talk about, let's revisit the parable, and we'll pull out some things I've pulled out for you so you can understand this parable a little bit better. The reign of MattithYAHU is like a man, a sovereign, who made a wedding feast for his son and sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast. So here you have your first invitation. It's the initial invitation. Come, here's my invitation, accept it so you can be invited to witness my son. This is the king. And in this case, this is Yahuwah. And before I go on, let me say that Yahusha is likening Yasharel, or Israel, to this parable. So obviously the king is Yahuwah. His son is Yahusha. The wedding feast is the reward for those who did or who helped bring Yahuwah's word and follow it. So these people accepted the first invite. Okay, that invitation being in Shemoth, in the book of Shemoth, that invitation being, there was a whole process when Yasharel came out of Mitzrayim. That would be Egypt for those who don't know. And on the mountain, Mount Sinai, Yahweh came down and he visited Moshe, and he gave him a covenant. He gave him 10 commandments, and they made a covenant. And Moshe relayed this to Yasharel. Those 2 plaques, the 10 commandments, was the invitation. Okay? And Yasharel, Israel, accepted it. We will do all that you have stated. They accepted the first invite from the king. Going on, but they wouldn't. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, "Say to those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner." Here is the second invite. Now, they accepted the invitation, Yasharel, to follow everything that Yahuwah stipulated. They made a covenant. And by the way, that covenant, their sacrifices that they gave in the tabernacle, it was seasoned with salt. So guess what? The salt, if you remember last week, the food custom, the salt was a very solemn covenant. Okay, very solemn. It's serious. So these people, not only did Yasharel accept the invitation, they agreed, they accepted the hospitality of the host. In this case, it's the sovereign, which is Yahuwah. They're invited to be participants in the wedding of the son, which is Yahusha. And at this point in MattithYAHU, the son is here. Okay? They would not come. That means on purpose. So Yahuwah sends out his servants being prophets, his servants being teachers, his servants being evangelists, And you know that he sent plenty of them. My oxen and fatted cattle are slaughtered, and all is ready. Come to the wedding feast. Again, this is the king continuing to invite the nation. But they disregarded it and went their way. Meaning they ignored the covenant and the invitations that they said that they would accept, and they did what they wanted to do, going after other pagan Elohim, pagan deities. This one to his field and that one to his trade. Just one moment, please. All right, sorry about that. Now, the alliteration, this one to his field and that one to his trade, they were caught up in the cares of the world. This one to his field, he's worried about his own property. He's worried about his own things, and this property was given to him as a provision of the covenant. That one to his trade, he's worried about his job, his income. This one's worried about his property and his prestige. The other one is worried about his income. Okay? Is that not applicable not only to Yasharel that day, but to today? And having seized his servants, again the prophets, insulted and killed them. Now I don't have to tell you that the prophets suffered great harm at the hands of Yasharel, Israel. All you have to do is look back. You know, they were thrown in pits, lions' dens. One was tossed in a pit with refuge, a cistern. It's said that MattithYAHU was split in two. So his servants, they were insulted and killed. But when the sovereign heard, he was wroth and sent out his soldiers, destroyed those murderers, and set their cities on fire. Is that not what happened to Yasharel when the Babylonians and Assyrians came in and sent them into exile? They had to leave their own city. Then he said to his servants, the prophets or new prophets that were left, the wedding feast indeed is ready, but those who were invited are not worthy. Therefore, go into the street corners, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding feast. These are people who did not accept the first invitation, but because of the wretchedness of the previous invitees, the king has opened up a chance to attend the wedding feast of his son to common people, in our case, the whole world. And those servants went out into the street corners and gathered all whom they found, both wicked and good. Both wicked and good. And the wedding hall was filled with guests. So again, more invitations to accept Yahweh's covenant has been sent out to the whole, where all who were found, everyone in the world gets an invitation. And if you recall, Yahweh's word says that he comes to each of us 1,000 times. So it's not even really a double invite. It's more like a 1,000 invite, for lack of a better term. All right, verse 11. And when the sovereign came in to view the guests, so let me stop here. Obviously, people have accepted the invite. Okay, they have issued their invitations to the doorkeeper. They have been admitted, and remember, both wicked and good have been admitted to come and witness the wedding feast. That means everyone has a chance to come and witness the wedding feast. if you accept the invite, whether you're wicked or whether you're good. Okay? Everyone gets a chance. And they're assembled. Okay? At this point, it is assumed, and we wouldn't know that today, but in saying this parable, Yahusha is speaking to Hebrew people in the first century, and they understood that if the people are assembled, they have already received gifts from the sovereign of the clothing. Okay? So they're in their refinery that the king has provided them. They're sitting there and they're waiting for the king to arrive. Okay? And when the sovereign came into view, the guests, he saw that a man who had not put on, he saw there a man who had not put on a wedding garment, and said to him, "Friend," I repeat, "Friend, how did you come in here not having a wedding garment?" And he, meaning that man, was speechless. Remember, to receive a wedding garment is a high honor. To refuse it is a high insult. Okay? Then the sovereign said to the servants, "Bind him hand and foot, take him away, and throw him into the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen." Now let's go back a little bit. This man accepted an invite. Okay, this is one of the wicked, obviously. He accepted the invite of the king. He was granted admittance. He was granted an opportunity to have clean clothes. In this case, I'm going to say clothing as white as snow. And if you recall your scriptures, any time that someone is presented in brilliant white clothing, that means their sins have been washed away. Okay? Either it's an angel, a MattithYAHU, okay, who has come down from the Shema on some task sent from Yahuwah, or it's someone who has finished their job here on the earth, maybe a prophet, maybe someone, and their sins were covered by the blood of Yahusha, and their clothing was white as snow, meaning that they're pure, meaning that they have been cleaned, and that they're fine. This man denied that clothing. So the illusion is that he decided to stay in his wicked ways and then still attend the party. So the sovereign throws him out of the house and bars him, and the man, because he was actually in the house of Yahuwah and he denied it and maintained his wicked ways, he's now outside weeping and banging on that door, because once everyone attends, the door is closed and you can't get back in. Closed party, custom. You can't get back in, and this man will be weeping, and he's aggravated. He's probably trying to get back into the party, and guess what? It's too late. For many are called, but few are chosen. I'd like to point out one more thing. And I want to go back to those pictures. If you recall, in the part of the scriptures that many refer to as the Last Supper, Yahuchanan was to the right of Yahusha, but Judas was to the left. And he was in a seat of honor. He was in a seat of honor according to the customs. he was invited to the wedding feast. Not only did he accept the hospitality of the host, which automatically means that he cannot or should not be an enemy, he accepted, and I think it's in Luke or it might be in Mark, but he accepted a choice morsel from Yahusha. Yahusha dipped his hand in the food, and he said, the person who takes this sop, S-O-P, S-O-P, is the one who is against me. And that sop, if the honored guest or the sovereign hosting the party, if they gave you a choice morsel out of their hand, they fed you out of their hand, or gave you food out of their own plate, that also was an honor. So it illustrates, it lights up how wicked Judas was. Not only did he sit in a seat of honor, but he broke bread, he ate the bread offered by Yahusha. And to go back to the last verse, there should be weeping and gnashing of teeth when he realized his treachery. Is that not what he did before he killed himself? When he realized he was cast out. So, in review, Custom 1, double invitation. Custom 2, invitations and closed party. Custom 3, wedding garments. Custom 4, assemblage of guests and seats of honor. Thank you for attending this webinar. If any of you are interested, this webinar and previous webinars are recorded and have been recorded. And if you do not have the time to listen to a live recording, you can go to youtube.com, and in the search box you can put in MattithYAHU Direct, and you will find the MattithYAHU Direct channel. And you can listen to any of the previous videos at your leisure. And if you have any questions or comments, or if you would like an invite to the live webinars, which we have every week on 4th day, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can direct at yahoo.com. And I am Ayana, and I would like to say, may Yahuwah abundantly bless you and your family with his ahab, that would be love, and his shalom, that would be peace. Thank you very much.